Well, I think we're going to get started.
Yep, you can go ahead.
Can I get started?
Yep, you can go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Civilian Oversight Commission's first virtual town hall of 2021. This evening, we'll be discussing the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department use of force. The Commission's town halls are designed to lift up community voices. We'd like to hear from LA County community members about the experiences you've had with deputies and how you feel about public safety in your community. Before we hear from you, we have a panel of speakers who will share their expertise. You'll be hearing from Casimiro Tolentino, who is the Oversight Commission's vice chair and a former administrative judge for the state of California. You'll also hear from Patti Giggans, Civilian Oversight Commissioner and Executive Director of Peace Over Violence, John Raphling, Senior Researcher at the Human Rights Watch, and Pastor V. Jesse Smith, Senior Pastor of the Way Center of Truth and founder of Heights of Greatness Leadership Institute. In addition, we have Chief Kelly Porosky from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, who is Chief of the Bureau of Professional Standards. A couple of housekeeping matters before we get started. If you're posting or tweeting during tonight's town hall, feel free to tag us on social at LA County COC. And when it's time for the live comments and questions, as a reminder, you'll need to be logged into WebEx to ask a question or to make a comment. If you're watching on Facebook or listening over the phone, you won't be able to provide live comments. The WebEx login information can be found on the Commission's website at coc.lacounty.gov. For those logged into WebEx, if you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand in the participants window. That will put you in the queue. Just a couple of timely matters that have struck me this week, kind of in the nature of where we are and where we've been. Just yesterday, the House of Representatives passed an extensive and expansive bill overhauling police practices and policies. The bill was named after, in honor of George Floyd. And also going back, it is just this week that 30 years ago, Rodney King was beaten here in Los Angeles County. How all that fits together, if at all, perhaps the panelists can comment on. For now, I'd like to welcome Chief Porosky. As I said, she is Chief of the Bureau of Professional Standards in the Sheriff's Department. And if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself, Chief Porosky, and make a few comments.
Good evening. Yes, so I am Chief Porosky and Kelly Porosky, and oversee the Professional Standards Division for the LA County Sheriff's Department. I have just recently been assigned to that particular division and look forward to working with the Civilian Oversight Panel. I've been on the department for over 31 years and various assignments at various ranks. I like to focus on policies, procedures, and systems to improve efficiencies and to streamline procedures. So that's my background.
I know that you're going to be an avid listener tonight and take back with you to the Sheriff's Department comments and concerns of members of the public and also the panelists, and hopefully if there are specific concerns raised by some of members of the public, that you'll follow up on those. So it's important that you're here as the eyes and ears of the Sheriff's Department.
Thank you for the invitation.
At this point, I'd like to turn this over to get started to Commissioner Casimiro Tolentino, as I said, who is the Commission Vice Chair. So the floor is yours, Kaz. Please introduce yourself and provide your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Chair Rubin. I'm a retired administrative law judge. I've been a former member of the LA City Civil Service Commission and Fire Commission, and my practice prior to being a judge focused on labor and employment discrimination, enforcing California civil rights laws. I'm very familiar with LA and its diverse population. I came here with my family from the Philippines at the age of 7. I grew up here in LA and attended public schools at Pico Union, South LA, and Montebello. I attended Magnolia Elementary School, 74th Street Elementary School, Horace Mann, and Montebello High, and went to UCLA for both my law degree and undergraduate degree, and now live in Echo Park, Silver Lake area. I'm glad Commissioner Rubin mentioned the Rodney King beating, because it's one of the seminal events in the area of that we're listening in tonight. I'm here to listen to your comments and stories about the use of force, both positive and negative, and I'm here to learn and to help the Commission and the Sheriff's Department address the issues that you raise. And now I'd like to introduce Civilian Oversight Commissioner and Executive Director of Peace Over Violence, Patti Giggans. Ms. Giggans?
Thank you, fellow commissioner. I'm really glad to be here tonight. Coming to the town halls that we host has been always, I try not to miss a town hall because it's an opportunity to really hear from the community, to learn, and I always try to come with an open heart and an open mind. And it's really significant that the voices of the community are listened to and that we listen to each other. I've been part of the Civilian Oversight Commission since its inception. I don't know if we're going on 3.5 years now. And it's the first time that there has been an oversight commission for the Sheriff's Department. And I think it's an important step and an important contribution to moving as Chief Kowalski said, moving systems forward. You know, I'm someone who also, I've been at Peace Over Violence for most of my professional life now. And we work with survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, child abuse, and other forms of interpersonal violence, and have been part of the wave of bringing about a perspective that really includes understanding what trauma does to a person. And so I look very forward to participating. Again, I'm here with an open heart and an open mind tonight. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is going to be John Raphling. Welcome. I had the good fortune of hearing you several years ago at Loyola Law School, the Fiddler Institute, and I remember your participation on that panel. So welcome this evening, and please proceed.
Okay.
All right, we're not hearing you. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, go ahead and
am
start over,
unmuted.
John.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm on the phone because I'm very bad with computers, so hopefully this will work. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm John Raphling with Human Rights Watch, and really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all and being invited here. So 2 speakers have already mentioned it. 30 years ago yesterday, LAPD officers brutally beat Rodney Glenn King up in the San Fernando Valley. What happened to King was not particularly unusual, especially in Los Angeles' Black community. What was unusual at that time was that it was on videotape and that the rest of the world got to see this part of a reality of how policing is conducted. Personally, I was in law school in March of 1991 when I saw that video. Subsequently, as a lawyer, I worked as a deputy public defender and then as a private criminal defense attorney representing people accused of crimes, including people arrested by Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. I also represented people who'd been abused and beaten, in some cases killed by police, including by sheriff's deputies. One of my last cases as an attorney, I'm no longer an attorney, well, I guess I'm technically still an attorney, but I no longer practice law. But one of my last cases involved a young man who was ordered out of his car at gunpoint by sheriff's deputies. They claimed that he wasn't following orders. He was turning his head. They said he laughed at them. They ended up throwing him to the ground, beating him with their fists, pepper spraying him, tasered him. His whole face was swollen up from the beating. And years later, he was still dealing with the psychological trauma. The Sheriff's Department, I should say LA County, eventually settled the case after paying their contract defense lawyers who knows how much to drag out the litigation. To my knowledge, none of the deputies were ever disciplined or ever received any training or were ever even counseled about what happened. They didn't pay the settlement themselves, and they probably got paid overtime for time spent working on their defense. We as taxpayers did pay. As far as I know, only one sheriff's deputy has faced prosecution for a fatal shooting in the past 20 years. Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office almost never file on police officers, rarely succeed when they do. There are many reasons for this. The law allows police to use deadly force in many circumstances, and all police officers are trained to know the law. Now, sometimes that means that they're following the law, but sometimes it means that they know what they have to say to convince investigators, prosecutors, judges, juries, if it gets that far, that they were following the law, even when they aren't. Investigations of police officers tend to be softball. Give the officer the benefit of every doubt. Don't ask tough questions. Don't use interrogation tactics to extract confessions. Now, I'm not saying these techniques are acceptable for anyone. I'm just pointing out that there's a double standard that applies to favor the police. Investigations of police force incidents tend to stress any negative quality they can find about the victim and the witnesses, while disregarding complaints of prior misconduct by the officers. Of course, law enforcement officers get to have their attorneys with them to prepare for questioning. And underlying it all, police departments investigating their own officers, and they have an incentive to exonerate them, right? Protecting themselves, their departments from liability, protect the reputation of the department. And beneath that protecting this underlying ideology of command, obedience, and force. Lack of prosecution and discipline of sheriff's deputies who take violent action against members of the public is not unusual. In fact, it's standard in U.S. law enforcement that accountability structures are weak and that discipline is rare. With Human Rights Watch, I conducted deep research in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There I found that in a 5-year period, in 1,700 non-lethal force incidents, they found only 2 out of policy and imposed no discipline in either. Again, these numbers are not an anomaly, but expected when you have a secretive agency investigating itself. Impunity breeds a sense of being above the law. My investigation of the Tulsa police found that they inflicted force on Black people at a rate nearly 3 times greater than they did to white people. This reflected much higher rates of stops, searches, and arrests of Black people in Tulsa. Tulsa is not different from law enforcement across the country. where racial disparities are persistent and often extreme. I have not researched Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, but I'll say my observations as a lawyer over more than 20 years dealing with cases involving the Sheriff's Department leads me to believe that the impacts of abusive policing fall most heavily on Black and Latino communities. What my research in Tulsa also exposed was that policing was focused on the communities most impacted by poverty. The poorest communities were also the ones where the most Black people lived, which tells a story of discrimination, segregation, and historic inequity. We can tell a similar story here in Los Angeles. Now, only a very small amount of policing relates to crime in which violence or serious injuries occur. In my research, I saw, and other studies have also indicated this, most of policing including incidents that resulted in uses of force, involve crimes of poverty, crimes of substance use, warrants for unpaid tickets, police responding to homelessness and people with mental health conditions. And that raises a serious and critical question. Why are police our primary answer for these problems? Why are police, whose primary tools are command, obedience, and then force, are responding to issues around homelessness, to people with mental health conditions, to poverty, which is breeding crime? I don't have exact numbers, but the LA County budget for law enforcement, including prosecutors, probation, jails, and of course the Sheriff's Department, is huge. And it's vastly more than the budget in this county for housing, for supportive services, for reentry for people coming out of jails and prisons, for mental health treatment. Measure J signals the beginning of a change in the right direction, but we have a long way to go. So from what I've seen, the clearest ways to reduce police violence, to reduce excessive force, is one, to create strong, independent accountability mechanisms. And two, more importantly, to reduce the use of policing to address problems in our community and instead to invest in solutions that help people. I appreciate that this commission is working on building that oversight. And I hope that we can all work together to meet community needs outside of the use of law enforcement. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I don't know if you're familiar with the bill that was passed yesterday in the House of Representatives. It's obviously, I don't want to get into politics, but I read today that it was going to have a hard road in the Senate. But it seems that there are many features of that bill that even if it runs into roadblocks, are features that we ought to look at carefully here in Los Angeles and in California. I mean, one relating to immunity issues and other issues. So if you briefly want to address anything that you know about in that legislation that would be helpful here in Los Angeles, please go ahead.
Sure. I mean, the hard part is the briefly, because it's over 100 pages long. It's basically a grab bag of all these different reform initiatives that have been raised over the years, and some aspects of it are very good, and some aspects are weak, to put it bluntly. You alluded to the problems of getting it passed. Some of the issues like immunity, qualified immunity is a big issue, but probably not something that the county would have the power to address. There are provisions in it that have the federal government providing funding to incentivize independent oversight. And that's good. The problem is that the way it's written, it allows loopholes for jurisdictions to have not particularly independent oversight. The value, if it's passed, I think, is that LA County could choose to use money and this funding and this federal support to actually build out good quality, independent oversight, and not use the loopholes that would allow less so. That would be the area that I'd be most hopeful that we in LA County could really take advantage. Much more to say on it, but I'll stop at that.
Right. Thank you. I know I just sort of threw that out at you, figuring that you probably knew something about it. And we in LA County, certainly this commission, are always looking for some tools that we can use to help to make some difference. So thank you for that. And at this point, I want to welcome Pastor V. Jesse Smith, who I mentioned at the outset is a senior pastor of the Way Center of Truth and founder of Heights of Greatness Leadership Institute from the Antelope Valley. So Pastor Smith, the floor is yours.
So kindly, you guys can hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. First, let me extend my appreciation to this awesome commission. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with you tonight, and I know I'm limited on time, so I'll try to be as quickly as possible. I'm living in California, but I was originally from New York, so New York we talk kind of fast, so I'm gonna try to be as concise as possible. But I want to extend my my thoughts and prayers to every person or loved one who has been a victim of excessive force by law enforcement. To the family, and I come out of the Antelope Valley of Brother Michael Thomas, a 61-year-old Black man who was fatally shot in the Antelope Valley by a deputy sheriff whose daughter, Maisha Lopez, is still seeking answers and justice surrounding her father's death. I want her to know, and I want the family to know, your voices are being heard today, and I appreciate this commission for coming into existence. To the family of Leroy Browning, another young man who was shot in the Antelope Valley by a deputy sheriff, I want that family to know that you are not forgotten. And I want to commend this commission for the fortitude to hold a town hall meeting such as this to bring to light that which has been in darkness far, far too long. Now, tonight, I'm speaking to you from my experience and the experience of so many like me in the Antelope Valley who have been stopped, arrested, accosted, followed, or used excessive force upon. I have lived in the Antelope Valley for more than 21 years. I have seen the best of our sheriff's department, but I've also seen the worst. I've seen when deputies come to the aid of the injured, have helped victims of crimes, have answered the call to community service, and placed their lives in the line of fire. I've seen them kneel with us, and I've seen them cry with us. But I've also seen them beat us, and I've also seen them shoot us, and I've also seen them profile us, and I've also seen them disrespect us. If we're to have a working relationship with the sheriff's department, particularly in communities of color, we will have to have a better AT&T communication connection. The AT&T communication connection we must have with the sheriff's department is simply this: accountability, transparency, and trust. Accountability, transparency, and trust. Until there is accountability, transparency, and trust with the sheriff's department, we can never have a lasting peace and safety in our community. While living in the Antelope Valley over the past 21 years, witnessed the use of excessive force and racial profiling among African Americans and Latinos. We've seen Black men and women placed in the back of patrol cars in handcuffs and then later released because they were wrongfully profiled. We've seen African American males stopped and questioned simply because they were in a neighborhood that happened to be all white. Between 2009 and 2014, we've seen Section 8 residents criminalized, arrested, and Section 8 vouchers revoked because they were associated as being connected with criminal elements of our society. We saw African American men shot down in the Antelope Valley, which were later ruled justified killings. But through the work of the Community Action League, the Antelope Valley branch of the NAACP, community activists, leaders, and clergy, we worked closely with the Sheriff's Department in the Antelope Valley to address some of the atrocities we experienced and encountered. In 2015, because we took to the streets to dramatize this social injustice and excessive use of force, the United States Justice Department descended on the Antelope Valley and confirmed that there was a pervasive pattern of civil rights violations of African Americans and Latinos by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, ranging from the use of excessive force, racial profiling, to housing discrimination. And as a result of these claims by the Justice Department, a settlement agreement was reached where the Sheriff's Department agreed to change their use of force policy in the Antelope Valley, to collect data regarding the use of force, to provide training on the appropriate use of force in the Antelope Valley, to rank and file deputies, and to work towards community engagement to break down walls of distrust and barriers of non-communication between the Sheriff's Department and the African American and Latino communities. I would be negligent and disingenuous to sit here to you and tell you tonight that as a result of the DOJ settlement, we have not made progress. That simply just would not be true, and I would not project that to you. We have made some progress. Because of that settlement agreement, we have a dialogue and not a monologue with the Sheriff's Department in Lancaster and Palmdale. Because of that settlement agreement, we have community advisory councils consisting of community activists and leaders in the community. Because of that settlement, when a shooting takes place in the Antelope Valley, a phone call is made to the leaders in the Antelope Valley community telling us about the shooting. Because of that settlement, Section 8 housing right now, Section 8 housing voucher revocations have decreased, and the decrease of Black and Latino people being placed in the back of patrol cars has somewhat diminished. Because of that settlement, we have absolutely made some progress, but here's the problem. It hasn't been significant progress. We still have a lot of work to do. The monitoring team from the Justice Department, who are responsible for supervising the settlement agreement, just recently released a report in 2020, I believe it was December of 2020, which they found, and this was literally their language, significant concerns with executive management's oversight of Antelope Valley use of force incidents. It determined that there were 11 to 12 instances where the Sheriff's Department have not been in compliance with the settlement agreement that they agreed upon. This non-compliance involved a lack of leadership supervision with rank and file deputies regarding the use of force. Here's what the report found as I try to bring this to a close. It found that the Sheriff's Department failed to provide supervisory review of deputies' use of force reports. It found that there was no management review of use of force of investigations. It found that deputies who engaged in inappropriate use of force were not held accountable for violating policy. It found that deputy supervisors were not held accountable for inadequate investigations. It found that there was no management oversight remedial use regarding training, and that the Sheriff's Department had no annual use of force data analysis from which they could learn and gather information as to whether a pattern or a trend of the use of force was taking place. The DOJ monitors concluded, I quote, "It has been more than 5 years since the parties have signed this settlement agreement, and the Sheriff's Department is still not in compliance with any of these core provisions." So what does that mean we have to do in our community? It means that we must have a better AT&T communication with the Sheriff's Department. It means that we must have accountability, transparency, trust, and transparency and accountability with the Sheriff's Department. When unjustified shootings of Black men in their home take place by the sheriff deputies, and a daughter can't get answers as to why her daddy is dead, somebody must be held accountable for this valuable loss of life. When a Black man is shot multiple times, he is unarmed, and his family is asking questions, how did it happen? But they can't seem to get a straight answer from law enforcement. It means our community is not connecting with the Sheriff's Department because we don't have transparency. When I, as a Black man, a pastor, a community leader, and an activist in my own community, feel unsafe driving a vehicle in my own community, when a patrol car comes behind me, even if they don't put on a siren, I get apprehensive just at the mere presence of it. It means there is a non-communication between the Sheriff's Department and our community because there is no trust present. Please hear me well. This is not an indictment on the entire Sheriff's Department. There are many Sheriff's Department in our community who live where we live, go to the movies where we go to the movies, shop at stores where we shop at, attend worship services where we attend worship services. They are our neighbors, our siblings, our cousins, our uncles, and some of them are maybe even be our children. But we must support them. We must commend them, and we must work with them to make justice a reality for all of God's children. So for the sheriffs, for those sheriffs who refuse to go under divine order, and for those in leadership positions at the sheriff's department who refuse to monitor, regulate, analyze, or scrutinize the use of force and or excessive use of force, then we must dramatize this social injustice even in the midst of COVID-19 through social media, in the houses of our legislature, and yes, even at the ballot box, to secure the justice we need for our loved ones, for our family, and for our community. The sheriff's department cannot police itself. We who are here today are saying in no uncertain terms that if the sheriff's department is going to community, there must be accountability, there must be transparency and trust. Otherwise, it just will not work. I close with this, as I say to the sheriff's department with respect to the settlement agreement that we have. I say the same thing that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said to America when he looked at the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the Emancipation Proclamation. Those words were very simple. Be true to what you said on paper. Thank you, and I'll turn it back to the host.
Thank you very much, Pastor Smith. I am sure that Chief Borowski will take your words very much to heart, take it back to the Sheriff's Department. I am also sure that at an upcoming meeting, the Civilian Oversight Commission is going to look carefully at the Justice Department's 2020 indictment, if you will, of the fact that there is still so much that's not in compliance. So I want to thank you very much for that. And I think at this point, we're going to go to public comments and then hopefully have time to circle back among us. Now it is, I think, I'm not quite sure what the numbers are of those people who have signed up for public comment. We get pre-registrants and we get people who sign up by raising their hand and contacting Jennifer Osborne, who handles all the public comments. So, but what I'd like to say is that this is a time that we do want to hear from those members of the public, the town halls. We set it up in such a way that we are not limited to the normal 2 minutes that we get during the commission meetings. I'm hoping that depending on the number of participants, that we will allot a maximum of 4 minutes apiece. Now, that doesn't mean that each of you has to speak the 4 minutes, but I'd like to get started with that, Jennifer. So if you want to take over calling members of the public to information.
Absolutely. And as a reminder, in the WebEx system, please be sure that you click on the hand in order to raise it. When the hand is shaded in with color and it's gray, that means that you are in queue to speak. If you're unable to find that option, please send me a chat in the messages. I'll also be reviewing the list of those who had pre-registered, and I'll unmute you accordingly. And before we get started with our first speaker, we do have one announcement in Spanish.
Buenas tardes. Si necesitan una traducción al español, simplemente digan la palabra español antes de comenzar y sus comentarios serán traducidos. Gracias.
Thank you. And our first comment will come from Adrianaquinones. Adriana, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Very faintly. Perhaps you can speak closer to the microphone and a little louder.
Okay, I'm going to take off my my headpiece. Is that better?
That's better. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Adrianaquinones. I'm a resident of Hacienda Heights, but I grew up in Boyle Heights, and I also lived in Southgate and Highland Park. So I'm very familiar with the Sheriff's Department.
growing up, there was a lot of abuse by LAPD. It was common for young men, brown men and black men to get beat up with no accountability. I can tell you that now things are better. We have a dialogue with our local sheriff's department. We work very closely. However, I think we are missing various pieces in making this work. I think the Civilian Oversight Committee was initially a good idea. However, you do need to include community, elected officials, the sheriff's department. We all have to come together as a group and start addressing the different issues. If there's violence, how do you address the violence? If there's not enough police officers in the community, accountability goes in every direction. I can tell you that it's not all the law enforcement fault. Everything that happens in the community, we also as a community need to step up and start addressing gang violence, start addressing poverty, lack of education. There's a lot of things that we need to address as a community. I'm a little concerned about taking money out of the budget, the sheriff's budget, and putting it back into the community. The reason being is that I think the best use is to keep it with the schools, have after-school programs like we did when we were young, and it was working up until they took away the funds. If you start giving it to the nonprofits, we're going to not be able to control. We're not going to be able to have audits, accountability. So it will become much more political. So I would suggest that that money goes back to school activities, tutoring, college advisory, things like that. I'm also very concerned with the current status of the sheriff's department and the county supervisors. From what I've seen from the outside looking in, I can see that there's a lot of political games being played. I don't like it because I think that I see what is happening. Let's be honest and let's start thinking, start representing the people, start talking to the people, not to each other or at each other. Start talking to us, the people that you're supposed to be representing. We will tell you what is working and not working, because currently the only people that are benefiting out of this is the attorneys that are filing lawsuits that we have to pay. I would love if the Oversight Committee starts going out into the communities and starts talking to the communities about what's really happening. And keep in mind that every community has different issues. And I can tell you that having lived in the different areas of Los Angeles, I can tell you that Hacienda Heights has less problems than Boyle Heights does and Highland Park. So I would encourage you to start really talking to us, the people that live in those communities. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And the next comment will come from Christian Lamont. Christian, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yep, please go ahead.
Yes, hi. I wanted to know, what is the incentive program and process in place for sheriff's deputies and members of the LA Sheriff's Department who turn in and report racist or white supremacist behavior and use of force by a fellow LEO? And then follow up to that, what is the process to halt the culture of retaliation for those who do turn in racist, violent, and white supremacist coworkers? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. And I'm not sure if any of the panelists would like to chime in on that. I do want to make a special note that we have staff who are taking notes of all of the comments and questions, and we will be providing them to the Sheriff's Department for review and also analyzing them for further action. So I'm not sure if any of the panelists wanted to comment or if we should move to the next question or comment.
Jennifer, I would like to hear from all the members of the public who have signed up, and then if there's some time left over maybe we can address some of the issues, but the fact that the questions and comments are going to be compiled, I think it would be better at this point to hear from everybody first before we respond individual questions.
Sure, sounds good. So the next person that we will hear from is Steve Hill. Steve, you are unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all the panelists, especially my friend, D. Jesse Smith. That was I've run for state senate twice. That was the only Black man that gave me his delegate vote. So I appreciate that, Jesse. And thank you for all you do for the community. My name is Steve Hill. I'm a U.S. Marine aerospace worker and 10 years as a peace officer for the California Department of Corrections as a state correctional officer. I worked at 2 different maximum security prisons, one being CCI, which is California Correctional Institution at Tehachapi, and one being CSP LAC, which is California State Prison, Los Angeles County. And man, I don't even know what to say. I feel like a hostage in my own community. I have a $1.1 million lawsuit right now. I've lived here for 30 years. 30 years of my life here in this community. And I had a member of my family shot and killed in my driveway. The dog didn't bite anybody, and my neighbor witnessed it, and there was still no accountability. That was 10 years ago. I'm currently, for the last 17 years, I've been a real estate appraiser. I had a deputy come to my house off the record to question me about why I was in his neighborhood. And I have the department caught in several lies. The investigation has already been done and was cleared. And I have a person who witnessed the whole 17-minute investigation. Her name is Vanessa Wilk. It's the wife of the current state senator for 21st Senate District. She witnessed the whole conversation. She was the only reason that I could remain even partially calm. But he spoke to me like I was an inmate, so I ended the conversation and told him I would just be getting an attorney. And even my attorney told me, and I knew this happened, but I never thought it would happen to me. They're slow walking my case. I paid them $3,500 at the beginning of a pandemic. We're not nowhere near to having a hearing. This is part of the fucked up system that we live in. We live like we are still slaves. I had this guy come to my house and ask me why I was in his neighborhood. I live in an exclusive neighborhood. He lived in tract homes. And he basically is going to get away with it, just like they got away with shooting my dog. And don't the damn thing change? Nothing changes. I went out and spoke to the Citizens Advisory Committee. I went out to try to warn the sheriff, Captain Schaefer. I went out, he ignored me. I sat in the front row and told him I had a problem. The whole fucking panel ignored me. I left there without talking to any of them that night. That's what made me file a lawsuit. You guys got to do more than this dog and pony show shit. We shouldn't have to live like this up here. With that being said, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. And the next comment will come from G. Young Carolyn Park. You are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have a comment.
Okay, we'll move on to the next person. Julie Martinez, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. So modern policing, including the Sheriff Department, they are provided with the tools and the funding, the largest sheriff department in the nation, quite possibly the world. They're provided with the tools to apprehend and arrest and utilize the process. And yet somehow the Ventura Sheriff Department, LA County Sheriff Department, has veered off course. They unlawfully detain people. They physically abuse people. They arrest people. They do what we in the community call panic shootings and rite of passive shootings because they're part of gangs, not cliques, but gangs. So please understand that we as a community know that the sheriff department operate as judge, jury, and executioner. And yet we know they are provided with policing tools and they're not utilized, do not utilize them. They harass our community members. The conversations with communities, especially in East LA, we can characterize the deputies as being insensitive, cruel, and brutal. How any of them passed any psychological exam is quite shocking. They are angry and they are mean. And now we've discovered recently with a CBS news that the gangs operate with specific intent to go after the youth of communities of color. I'm the grandmother of a young man, Paul Rea, who was murdered by the sheriffs in East LA at a routine traffic stop. There was never any citation given. What's more shocking is that the family continues to suffer from the harassment. One of the panelists mentioned this, that they're trying to paint the entire family in a negative light. That is why we are being followed. That is why they sit outside of our homes. How do we know that this is targeted harassment? Well, when they followed my 14-year-old granddaughter outside of her middle school, you know when they utilize terms and they speak to my granddaughter and reference her brother who was murdered and they know his name, how would they have ever been able to pick out my granddaughter and once school is released? It's a targeted harassment against our family. When I was moved out of East LA, the sheriffs are there. If we walk by and family members dare to ask why are they there, they seem to always mention my grandson's name. They understand, they share information, they take photos, they utilize their personal cell phones while they're being paid by the citizens of the County of Los Angeles. They utilize their personal cell phones to take photos of family members, and they share these photos. Both of my granddaughters have been harassed. It's already been brought up that one granddaughter was arrested, which I consider an illegal, they illegally detained her. When I arrived at the sheriff department, the watch commander had no knowledge of where she was. I was just told that my granddaughter was en route from the place that she was picked up, which was the memorial site of my grandson's death. And yet the watch commander, an hour and a half later, did not know, could not find any deputy that had my daughter in the car or was holding her for any reason. And I was told by the watch commander that she's en route. I could have walked to the site from there. It's a 5-minute short jog. My other granddaughter was followed also in a car. And when she got out of the car, understanding how dangerous deputies could be and how quickly lives could be lost, she used her cell phone to videotape the officers, and it was taken away from her, and she was detained in a car as well. The harassment against family members who have lost a loved one must stop. We are tasked as a community to employ deputies or some type of law enforcement or policing. They're using our tax dollars to turn on us and harass us. They're not needed. Use the sheriff department as an investigative body, not to harass the community members on a daily basis. Please, to the COC, we're relying on you for help. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next comment will come from Janelle Morales. You are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment, Janelle. Janelle Morales, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
You guys, go over there.
Janelle, we can hear you. Would you like to make a comment?
Oh yes, hi. I'm sorry.
No problem. Please go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
Yes, I actually just wanted to comment. I actually been watching this. I just barely joined. I never actually knew about this. But I wanted to make a comment. My nephew was actually murdered in East Los Angeles by the sheriff's department, and they try to say that it was justified. But just on my end, I just feel like it wasn't, because besides him, before this murder occurred, um I witnessed like a lot of sheriffs in East LA. They're just like very violent. They the way they approach people in their cars, the way they treat people, and it's just not right. And I feel like last week I was watching, and the public, I don't know, I forgot his name, Hatami, he was talking about how, he's all about justice. But I just feel like people don't really, or the sheriff's department doesn't really pay attention to family members, because they just feel like, oh, it's just another person who was shot. And I just feel like us families, because we go out there, we march, and we like say how we feel, because we're angry inside, and people are hurt because their family members died. I just feel like the sheriffs don't really care, and they just, and I feel like once one murder happens and it's not justified, then it's okay. Like another cop feels like he could go ahead and do something because a cop got away with it. And I just feel like they're not really hearing us. Like and even like in other meetings where we're talking about family, like people getting murdered by the cops, like they don't make it a topic of conversation. They avoid people, and right away when someone wants to speak about it, they avoid the comment, the question, that they ignore it, or they just like don't really answer, and they make it short to cut people off. And I just feel like, when are like family members really actually going to be heard? When are they actually going to like punish them? When are they actually going to get justice, and cops get stop getting paid and stop killing? And it's not even just with people. Like, I could go out somewhere and probably see someone like get pulled over by a sheriff, and they're gonna approach the car real violently, pulling out their guns. And just to about a month ago, I was actually pulled over in Temple City by the sheriff's department. And I didn't have my license plate. It was actually stolen, so I made a report and I told the officer. So, make long story short, it was fine. He was okay to search my car. He told me that I was gonna get my car towed or whatever, and I got my car towed. But when I was in the back seat, I turned to talk to him, and he was like, "Oh well," he's like, "Oh well, put your leg in the car before I smash it." And this is a true story, and I just feel like it's just like us families don't get justice at all, like at all. And it's like, when are we actually really gonna like be heard, or like pay attention to? And I just feel like, are people really gonna listen, or so it's just kind of upsetting, because like everyone has to always repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, and like it's like basically we're crying for help, and like no one's listening. And I just feel like there's so many people in the world, like other people who get judged and just get treated. And I just feel like these cops really need to get punished, like stop getting paid, like I said, and really like be investigated. And just the way they treat people, it's just not right. It's just not right. We're all humans, and it's just I don't know, it's not acceptable. So that's just my feelings and how I feel.
Thank you for the comment. And the next comment will come from Leah Garcia. You're unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment. Leah Garcia, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hear me?
A little bit.
Hi, I'm the mother of Paul Rhea. His son was murdered June 27th of 2019. And it's just a lot of harassment. That's being harassment of the families, and we're begging somebody to help, and nobody is helping us. And where we go when we're supposed to call on is the sheriffs. They're the ones that actually torture. And I had an incident maybe a month ago, and I was driving down the street in East Los Angeles. I saw 3 patrol cars coming past me, Well, one was past me, the second one blocked me in, and they jumped out. 3 sheriffs jumped out of the car, and they wanted my registration and everything, which I provided. And I said, why am I getting pulled over? And they said, oh, there's shots fired. I was in that area for a while, previously to taking off, and I didn't hear nothing myself. But I was right there in front of a sheriff. He was acting really rude with me. And I was doing everything that they asked because I get very scared. I don't know what's their intentions. So I just kept on hearing Saavedra on the radio. Saavedra is the officer that killed my son. To hear that, I was freaking out. I started freaking out. I don't know if it was a game that they were playing with me or just harassment or just to torture me. I don't know, because right after they're like, okay, you can leave now. That's just one of the incidents I encounter, but there's a lot of them where I'm asked, where am I from? What gang am I from? They'll ask me that repeatedly, or ask me where I live now. And I could just be at a gas station just putting gas. They'll come up to me. There's something that really needs to be done, because me and my family, and I know other families, it's very hard for us to encounter these situations with them. Because from me, I don't know what are they going to do next. I don't know. I get very nervous, very scared. They'll ask me, why are you scared? But the whole time they're putting the flashlight to my car. I have like a little sticker that says Justice for Porea. They'll put it in like smile. They'll do different things just to, they want a reaction, which I'm not going to give them. But that's what they're looking for. And I'm just, me and my family are tired of the same thing going on for already almost 2 years. We didn't do nothing to them. They took from us. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next comment will come from Norman Johnson. Norman, please go ahead with your comment.
That's why you have to move them totally out the business. You don't need another law.
Norman Johnson, you are unmuted. Would you like to make a comment?
Well, you did have employees, we were still paying now.
Okay. Doesn't look like we're hearing anyone speaking to us.
You took on the responsibility of still paying people. That you made these people your employees, and you got to tell.
Okay, and the next comment will come from Manny Gonzalez. Manny, please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak to the COC. I am a longtime resident of East Los Angeles, and spent many of my young years living there. I still work in East Los Angeles. I've been working for the same organization for approximately 32 years. But I'm a victim of some violent crimes. I got shot 3 times. I've had my butt kicked several times by local individuals and stuff like that. And the thing that really strikes me the most about the sheriff's department is that they've responded to my needs. They responded to my family's needs. When I called for help, I received it. When I needed the help the most important times of my serious incidents, I got deputies. They helped me. The detectives came in. They did an amazing job. They were able to not only apprehend the individuals that did the bad things to me, but they were prosecuted. And in my eyes, it seemed like it was all done correctly. And I hear stories, a lot of stories about people not receiving the right attention from the sheriff's department. Well, that could be true, and it could be false. We don't know. We don't know what the officers are actually seeing when they're pulling over the vehicle, or when they're driving by and they see someone walking down the street. One thing that really got my attention is that Pastor Smith, he mentioned AT&T, which was really good: accountability, transparency, and trust. And the whole thing is that lately, what I've been noticing about Sheriff Villanueva is that it seems that he's doing a really amazing job of trying to gather the trust of the community, getting involved in several community events, transparency. You know, I've never seen any solid, good use of social media like I have with Sheriff Villanueva, doing his weekly announcements and events and putting out his accountability to the public of everything that's actually transpiring. And to me, I find that really, really, incredible. I'd like to know, or I'd like to hear from the COC if there's any positive highlights of the sheriff's department. For the last hour, I've been hearing a lot of negative stuff. Yes, there's negativity in all aspects, in all organizations, and religious organizations, and politics. There's a lot of that, but there's also a lot of good. And people have to realize and understand that there is a lot of good out there. Um, you know, I have some personal dear friends that I met as a 14-year-old walking on First and Gage in East Los Angeles, and this gentleman was a 26-year-old sheriff deputy. We met that one day when I was 14 years old, and as of now, we still see each other on a very regular basis. In fact, I spoke to him twice today. I'm just saying, that's just my comments, my thoughts. I'd like to see more positivity on some remarks towards the sheriffs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the next comment will come from Tupe Asita. Tupe, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment. Tupe, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment. Don't seem to be hearing anything. We'll move on to Stephanie Luna. You are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
Oh yeah, hi, my name is Stephanie Luna. I am the aunt of Anthony Daniel Vargas. My nephew was shot and killed August 12, 2018 by two deputies that have recently been named in a CBS interview as being prospected Bandito members. I want to come on here and talk a little bit about a current situation that occurred. Not only did these two deputies, Jonathan Rojas and Nicholas Perez, not only did they murder, Anthony when they shot him 13 times, they also continue to harass my family, and they're displaying, tactics of intimidation that, replica what we've come to learn are, is a behavior of the deputy gang known as the Banditos and just other deputy gangs in general. Tuesday night, actually, we were doing a kind of a podcast and we were discussing family harassment and just, deputy gangs in general. And much to my surprise, when I looked up in front of my house, I was, kind of not shocked to see, but Jonathan Rojas was, standing in front of my driveway with other deputies responding to a call that had happened in the area. Now, let me just, bring this to your attention that this is the same deputy that murdered my nephew. This is the same deputy that punched my nephew in the head multiple times. And, I'm just trying to figure out, as far as the family harassment, like what are we supposed to do when this happens? I feel like if we're complaining about a deputy to another deputy and nothing's going to get done, they protect each other the way they're supposed to. I can't stress the fact enough that while I was standing out there kind of looking Jonathan Rojas face to face, there was about 8 or 9 other deputies surrounding him. And let me tell you that they protected him with their life. He kind of crouched down in the middle of a group of them while they all stood, turned and faced me and were trying to intimidate me. I had 9 officers glaring at me disgustingly. Like I felt like my life was in danger had I made any type of movement from the way that they were looking at me, the aggressive nature that they were staring at me with. It's concerning because we come to the CLC meetings, we complain about the family harassment and about everything that these families are facing, not just my family, the family of Paul Rea, the family of Marco Vasquez Jr., the family of, Ryan Twyman. There's a lot of families out there experiencing the same stuff that my family is. And we attend CLC meetings, we attend Board of Supervisor meetings, we do all we have to do to file complaints, we have videos, we take pictures. You know, we do all this stuff and I feel like our complaints aren't going nowhere because at the end of the day, I still walk down my driveway and I see this officer standing outside. You know, he knows where we live, and that's a little bit concerning. You know, after this CBS interview aired, you know, kind of naming him that he was in fact the prospect of the banditos, I'm not sure how to take having him in front of my yard. You know, I'm not sure if that department is trying to send some type of message, kind of letting my family know, like, hey, you know, maybe you guys should stop. I'm not sure how to take it. I feel threatened. You know, I do feel threatened by the fact that he was standing out there. And I feel threatened by the other deputies that were glaring over at me, trying to get me to put my phone down and stop recording and get back in my house. I just don't know what more it's going to take for these families to be heard, not just my family, but the other families. I'm not sure if it's going to take more blood on someone's hand, or, you know, a family member even ending up getting hurt in the process of this harassment for something to be done. But something needs to be done. And these families, such as mine, we need some kind of protection. And we need to be able to know that not only did they kill our loved one, but they're not going to, you know, take us either. And just, you know, we need something put in place where this can't be happening to, you know, my family and other families. Thank you.
Thank you. And I only have two individuals left that are currently signed up for public comment. If you feel like you have signed up, but you haven't been called yet, please go ahead and check your chat box and send a chat to the host, or raise your hand in the participant queue. The next comment will come from Ruby Quintillana. Please go ahead with your comment, Ruby.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to comment. My name is Ruby Quintanilla, and I just wanted to share one of the major limitations that I encountered while conducting my research for my dissertation. My research looked at arrest-related deaths and use of force policies in Los Angeles County over many years. And one of the major limitations of my research was due to not having complete and therefore accurate data regarding use of force incidents. So I noticed major discrepancies between the number of use of force incidents agencies reported via public request in comparison to what is mandated to be reported via the California URSIS use of force platform. So for example, for LASD, public information shows that in 2016, 2,011 use of force incidents occurred, while URSA shows 81. And again, in 2017, LASD shows 2,195, while URSA shows 85. So it was evident that there was a disconnect between definitions, reporting requirements, and that does not allow for a complete assessment of use of force incidents. So the data sources that are being used to assess the incidents does not tell the whole picture. So it's imperative to know the context of the data and how it's collected. So just therefore, my comment is that moving forward, any discussion regarding use of force incidents should include an independent mechanism that will track all use of force incidents. Of course, independent of any type of administrative discretion. And, you know, that could create a baseline that will then allow for complete and accurate data, and that will allow us, you know, to move forward in a more reliable assessment of use of force incidents. And I'm more than willing to share research and provide, you know, the recommendations that I made. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next comment will come from Valerie Estrada. Valerie, please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Valerie Vargas Estrada. I'm the auntie of Anthony Vargas and also Stephanie Luna, who just spoke a minute ago. So since the airing, well, my nephew was killed by the East Los Angeles Sheriff's Department on August 12, 2018. He was shot 16 times. He was fired at 16 times and shot 13 times. The deputies who had shot him, Nicholas Perez and Jonathan Rojas, had just been named and confirmed, as my sister had said, on a CBS LA national story. And since the story had aired, we've been at the hands of their harassment for the past, almost 3 years now, consistently. And like my sister had said, we constantly do testimonies. We constantly document everything that we're doing, and we come to the board we go to the COC meetings, we attend the town halls. I feel like we're doing everything that people are telling us to do to make sure some type of change and protection is done on the aftermath of these deputy shootings and the aftermath that the families have to suffer through. And since the special had aired, street, and during the podcast of deputy gangs and the family harassment, I had to hear on the opposite side of the line from where I live, which is a few cities away. I just hear my sister yelling, Rojas, and that he's in the driveway. And I cannot stress the fear that I had for my sister's life. I couldn't get a hold of her because she was too busy videotaping in case something had went down. And me and my sister were always together, and we're always talking about how we would handle the day where we would come face to face with them, because we see them everywhere. I can't even go down the street. They followed me home all the way to my residence in another city. My sister can't even go to the store without these deputies following her sometimes. I cannot stress the fear that I had for my sister's life, knowing that she might not be able to contain her own trauma and move forward and see the killer and know what he has done to my nephew, to our nephew, to our son, to our cousin, to our brother. I drove from my residence over there preparing that, hey, if Stephanie had made a wrong move and moved forward, all they could say is that they were in fear of their life, and they could have seen her as a threat, and my family could have faced another officer-involved shooting. I honestly don't know how many more testimonies I have to deliver to the board of to the civilian oversight site. I understand that you guys are here to have some kind of oversight of the sheriff's department, but I see nothing. I'm seeing nothing. So now I have to process this trauma, right, from my end, knowing that I can't even go out, that I have to sit here and worry about my sister's life. I have to worry about my Anthony's brother's life, who live down the street, where they know that they live, where they know where Rojas knows where we live now. He has no boundaries. Who's to say that he's not going to do the same thing to Anthony's brother next? I don't know what more you guys want me to do. I honestly feel to take my life, or maybe the life of one of our loved ones, for some type of change. And I can't stress enough how traumatizing that is, because you guys are supposed to be here to help us, and we're not getting any type of support. We're not getting any kind of protection.
Thank you for your comment. And the next comment will come from Stephanie Serrano. Stephanie, please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I'd just like to pay respect to all the families here that have lost a loved one to police violence. I pulled up some numbers, and I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it says that 885 people have been killed by police in LA County since 2000. Pretty sure it's a lot more. But it's just atrocious to hear the level of attack on our community, not only on our young children that are in housing situations that are really impacted by our communities, right? Our whole community is really at fault for these young people. I'm a social worker. I work with kids exiting out foster care probation in LA County. Our kids can't really walk these neighborhoods like regular kids without being hit up by gangs or the police. One of my clients was shot 5 times during November. So just the amount of assault on our community that we have every single day is absolutely ridiculous. To think that we cannot call the police for help is unbelievable and unacceptable. To believe that this family is being harassed by police officer that murdered their family is unbelievable. That man should no longer be on the police force, let alone continuing to harass his family. I'd like to remind everybody here why gangs started in LA County. Gangs started in LA County because the police were not protecting us. They were beating us. And so today, in 2021, you all really need to think, how are we going to build these bridges? Because Blue Lives Matters is not building a bridge. Blue Lives Matters is telling us, educated activists, fuck you. Racism exists, and we're proud, and we're going to continue on your tax dollars. So in 2021, not only are the police not protecting us, they're harassing our families, that they have murdered our children. And now you want to wave your Blue Lives flags and your big trucks and your stickers and your uniforms all in our communities. We don't know what's happening. Like, you're not overtly telling us, fuck you, we're racist and we're getting away with it. We see what's happening. Y'all need to get it under control, because you don't need to fear the police. We don't fear the police. We're the masses. It is your responsibility to get this under control, because we're tired and we're done. I'd like to bring up Andres Guardado's name. 18-year-old young man working. I work with these young people, 18-year-olds. You tell them, get off the street, get a job. He was murdered in the back. Automatically, every police officer that night should have went in jail. This system is wrong. These people don't have accountability. And until there's accountability, we're going to keep coming back. And whoever is in charge of accountability, if there isn't going on, then it's your fault.
And does that conclude your comments, Stephanie?
Blue Lives Matter is racist. You want me to get that out of your police force? I told them straight to their face, you should make it a law. Blue Lives Matter out of the police force. That is inciting more racism and more divide in the community. Get Rojas fired. Fire Rojas. Fire Rojas. He should not be out here harassing families. This woman out here doing podcasts, doing great work, getting threatened by a police officer. It's unacceptable.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Stephanie. The next comment will come from Lourdes Everett. Lourdes, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
Good evening. I am in the car driving. I'm listening to the public in comments. It is so sad to hear such harassment and killings. I'm just flabbergasted. I'm so angry. I really have no words at this moment, and I'm in the middle of the the 405 freeway. So I'm going to end my comments. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Lourdes. Please drive safe. We do have only one individual who is left for public comment. That individual is Krista Newble. Krista, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to say a few things. I did want to extend my heartfelt condolences to the families that are on here, but I also wanted to point out that LA County is about 5,000 and a few miles after that wide. It covers a lot of area. So when we lump all of LASD into one, it's not a true statement, because all of them are not the same. I personally know, and I hear these stories, but I personally have a story. And I will always have a story, because my mother has passed now, but when she got sick, she had cancer and she went to remission a few times, and she was driving on the freeway, and something happened where she didn't know where she was. And the sheriffs pulled her over because she was drifting in and out on the freeway on the 605. They pulled her over. They took her to her place. They searched, excuse me, they took her to their place. They searched through her phone, found me. I was in Hawthorne, drove to Hawthorne to where she was. And by the time I got to her, she had clicked back to normal because that's what happens with the type of cancer that she had. But those sheriffs didn't just leave her, they stayed with her. They waited. And even though I saw her and she was back to normal and I thought they were tripping, they came out and talked to me and told me, you need to go get her checked. There's something wrong. There's something really, really wrong. And then they followed up and continued to follow up of this Black woman they just barely met who was just someone that just helped up until the time that she passed. I have had contact with all kinds of sheriffs. I've been in the formerly known Twin Towers, up and down, all around. And I've seen the way they've been treated as well. I've seen them in the community. I've seen them helping. I think Villanueva, like the man said before, has been doing an excellent job trying to get in the community. But we are in the era of fuck the police, for, lack of better words, and my apologies if there's anyone older on here. I do not curse in front of older people. But we're in this era where the police are the enemy. There isn't a reason why we cannot have reform and law and order. But I don't really know what the commission itself can really do, because you can't just put all the police in jail. They have rights. If regular citizens have due process, are supposed to have due process, they have to have due process too, whether we like it or not. And the reform that has to take place that everyone is calling for, that has to come from the state. Law enforcement is mandated by state standards, not by county standards, not by city standards. Those changes in training and what they do, and whether they're trained to kill or trained to disarm, those things that have to change that everyone's calling for, that has to come from the state. You have to fight that at the Capitol. Commission cannot do anything about that. So I don't know what the commission can do other than give recommendations and requests and get the paperwork and all these other things. I'm not saying that the sheriffs haven't made mistakes. I'm not saying that. But all the sheriffs aren't in the game. We're talking about one community, supposedly.
Thank you for your comment. And I've never seen this before, but it looks like there's a call-in user who was able to somehow raise your hand. If you're a call-in user and your first 6 digits are 213304 and you raised your hand, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment. Okay, we are hearing nothing. So that does conclude all of the public comments for this evening, Chair Rubin.
No, wait, hold it. Wait.
There is a call-in user. Can you say what your name is, sir?
Yeah, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, we hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, my name is Tim Moline. I'm living in Highland Park, and I'm on the eligible list. Well, I'm retired, but before I retired, I'm on the eligible list for Community Services Assistant for the Sheriff's Department. I took an exam, I got on it, so this stuff is really of interest to me. And I have something anecdotal to what the people have been saying. I just want to know, the invading of the Capitol in Washington, D.C., there were some law enforcement officers that were implicated as part of that. I wanted to know, was there any study within the LA County Sheriff's Department whether there were any LA County Sheriff officers that were involved in the invading of the Capitol? I just wanted to throw that out there to let us know that, it's a similar type of situation, and I just wanted to bring that to the fore to if there hasn't been any investigation to that, I think it'd be a good idea if there would, because it's all part of the same issue too. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for that. And we did have one additional person raise their hand. Pharaoh Mitchell, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, thank you. And hi, Brother Jesse Smith. Yes, there was a saying that if you see someone who creates a crime and you don't do nothing about that, you're just as guilty as that person who created that crime. Vieira is most definitely a bad guy. He released officers back into our community who has been known to abuse people. Even the people on this call who speaking how good they are, if you know that there are sheriffs out there that's murdering people in our community, you're just as guilty as that murderer. Period, point blank. If you see somebody who's doing evil in our community, sheriff or any otherwise, you're just as guilty as that criminal. We're not saying that all sheriffs are bad. I know some very cool sheriffs. I speak to them every day in my community. What we're talking about is the good sheriffs letting the bad sheriffs get away with crimes and protecting them. I say it again, if you see someone who's guilty of creating a crime and doing a crime and you don't do anything about it, you're just as guilty. Most of your sheriffs joined in to be heroes in our community. Aren't you tired of coming to a job where you're hated because you're letting a few criminals get away with murder? I believe 80% of the sheriff's department are good people, but you letting that other 20% get away with terrorizing our community. And that's problematic. And the community is consistently coming to you guys, begging you guys for help, begging the board of supervisors for help, and no one is getting the help. We've marched here in the Antelope Valley. There's been 4 killings here in the Antelope Valley. And these sheriffs are still walking around in our community. And not only is it worse that they're walking around in our community, we got sheriffs who have records of harassing our community, and we still have to pay their salary after they retire. We got to give them a paycheck for the rest of their lives, but they tormented our communities. How is that okay? We're not talking about all the sheriffs. We're talking about those bad ones, those criminals who are terrorizing our community. And most definitely, the current captain is one of those bad guys. He's a bully. And within the last 2 years that he was in office, the Antelope Valley has done a complete turnaround with the sheriff's department. We've had sheriff's departments that the captains that were listening to the community and working with the community. In the last 2 years, the report has shown, the DOJ report has shown that the sheriff's department has done a complete 360. And not only that, he's bullying the captains to where the captains are just frustrated and want to give up in the community. They literally told the community members that we don't, the CEC members, that we don't answer to you. We have community members that saying they're carrying guns because they're afraid of the sheriff's department. That's problematic. And we need to do something and have something done. We're running to the boards of supervisors. We're running to you guys, and we're not getting the help we need. The community is speaking loud and clear. We need your help. We need help in this community. We need the DOJ to come back down and investigate the sheriff's department for not doing what they're doing. We can't continue to let a few criminals that's in the sheriff's department destroy our whole community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And we'll try one last person who signed up for public comment. Genevieve Claverall, you're unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment, Genevieve.
Yes.
Genevieve, we hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, actually, I am concerned with how the people are hostile to everything having to do with the police. That really worry me greatly. And I was just, listening to what's going on, and I think maybe we need to have some more of those hearings where people can actually deal with specific issue and see how we can work them out, because that cannot continue the way we are, doing now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And we did have one more person, Mary Moreno. You're unmuted. Please go ahead with your comment, Mary.
Yes, hi, good evening, everybody. First, I wanted to just acknowledge everybody that spoke earlier and give them my condolences for their loss. I think there was a lot of people that gave very powerful, impactful comments. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And second of all, I would just like to say that we have all been affected in some type of way with this narrative, of us versus them. And there really needs something needs to be done. There needs to be some type of change, and it continues. It continues not only with the killings, but with the interference of sheriffs, trying to stop, for example, prison reform. We're right now heading towards a path where we're going towards decarceration, and even, Sheriff Villanueva is opposing to that. By doing something that simply it has never been done before. And now he's, saying that he's going to send his deputies to Border Patrol hearings based on, Gascon's decision to not send his DAs, which is just, it's unthinkable. And I think that narrative really needs to change, and there has to be somewhere that we could rebuild that trust and bridge that gap, because right now there's so much uncertainty and so many barriers to just being able to trust that the police is actually here to protect us. I myself have three sons, boys, and before the COVID pandemic, when my son used to walk to school, he would constantly get harassed and ask, where was he from, and by police officers. And so this is, to have that talk with your son and tell him, this is what you do, and make sure somebody's with you, or make sure you record. We shouldn't have to do that. We should not have to live in fear and protect ourselves, not only from crime, but from the police. So, I really urge you guys to really consider everything that everybody before me said. And I thank you guys for this space and for just taking our public comments. Thank you very much, and have a great evening.
Thank you. And Chair Rubin, I'll turn it back to you with that being the last public comment.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to everybody who spoke. There was so much meaning and emotion and heartfelt anger and just concern about so many issues. And since we do have a little bit of time left before I offer some last minute comments, I wanted to give some of the panelists an opportunity if anybody wanted to respond to any of the issues that have been presented tonight. So any of the panelists want to make some last minute observations, comments, please go ahead. Okay, not seeing or hearing anybody. I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, my heart goes out to the families of your loved ones who have been a victim of law enforcement. I hear your frustration and I hear your pain, and I know to a certain degree what that entails. Coming from the Antelope Valley, and we experienced a number of things like that in terms of how people really just felt hopeless. And what I've heard here tonight are people who are feeling a little bit hopeless, but I see some frustration there as well. And I just really, and it just give you a sense of hope tonight that all is not lost, that I don't want you to believe that, nothing is going to happen and that your voices are going on deaf ears. I think that there's some strength in this commission to be able to do some powerful things and to really just go out and really represent on your behalf. And I trust that those on the commission have heard the voices of those individuals whose family have been killed and they believe police officers or county sheriffs are following them and monitoring them. I really pray that we follow up on that, because I think that's so important for us to let them know that they're not alone in this fight for justice for themselves. I want to encourage other people as well that I know that there's a lot going on, and I know sometimes you might feel hopeless. When we were in the Antelope Valley and we saw all of this happen, we were just like you. We got frustrated, but what we did was we organized. We galvanized town hall meetings. We went into churches. We reached out to everybody that we could reach out, even elected officials, and we took public testimony about exactly what was going on. We contacted local bar associations to reach out to us to help, maybe that they could file a lawsuit on our behalf for racial profiling and retaliation and harassment. There is help out there for you, and I'm just encouraging you to reach out, look into your local community. Also, what made it so powerful for us is that when we did our town hall meetings, the Justice Department saw exactly what we were doing, and we did reach out to them as well, and they came in and also helped. So there's hope, but what you have to do is make sure you are following and filing complaints. Paper trails are everything. So even though you get harassed and you get frustrated and you get upset and you might not want to do, please go file a complaint, because trust me, that's what makes them accountable. We're going to hold law enforcement accountable by making sure that we can follow the paper trail. So please file a complaint, even if you don't think it's worth anything. It is. I promise you, it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Smith, for that. That never gets said enough, and I thank you. I thank you for that. I think what we've heard this evening, as I started to say earlier, is powerful and gives not only members of the community, but those of us on the commission and those of you and those of us and you who do this important work much to think about. As Pastor Smith said, it's important to stay informed. And one of the ways you can stay informed is to follow listings on the Commission's website. That's coc.lacounty.gov. You will learn about future listening sessions in different parts of the county and different communities. As Commissioner Giggans said early on, we learn a great deal from being out in the community, and when we were actually doing them in person, we would travel around the county, and it was important for them and for us to see one another and to hear one another and to listen to one another. The next commission meeting is in 2 weeks. It will be Thursday, March 18th, a little over 2 weeks, that is, from 9 to 1. You can learn about the agenda and how to sign in and listen on, again, by following the Commission's website. I want to thank all of you, unless, again, once again, anybody has any last minute comments. I think it's hard to follow up on the most powerful of comments from the community. So with that, I wish everybody the rest of a good evening. Stay well and stay safe. And this concludes our town hall. Thank you all very much.